We're once again on the record in the case of the People versus Simpson. The defendant is present with counsel. The people are represented. Ms. Clark.
Yes, Your Honor. First of all, I have a copy of the return to search warrant. I'd indicate for counsel that it's numbered in discovery that they've already received pages 00220 through 00225.
Do you have a copy for the
For
clerk?
the court. This is for the court, Your Honor.
All right, give it to the clerk, please. I think Ms. Clark had mentioned some page numbers in your discovery. Do you have those page numbers again, Ms. Clark, for the defense?
I just handed it to the court. I think it's 00220 to 00225.
Those are the numbers that are stamped in the upper right-hand corner of this document?
I would indicate to the court, for the purpose of the motion, I direct the court's attention to the numbering on the items listed in the property report attached to the return to search warrant, that the numbering begins with 12.
Yes.
That's because items 1 through 11 that are the subject matter of the motion were not seized pursuant to warrant.
All right, so those items that that you're seeking to admit in the course of the preliminary hearing are included within items 1 through 11?
That's correct.
Your Honor, we have a return to search warrant and referring to an attachment incorporated inventory. I do not have a copy of the inventory.
Well, if counsel separates the pages, then if counsel has segregated the pages so that they have property reports in one spot and search warrants in another, then of course it won't be attached in counsel's copy. That's why we numbered the discovery, and that's why you have consecutive pages 00220 through 00225 to indicate what all went together.
What I'm saying is we do not have 00222, 00223, or 00224, or 00225.
All right, I assume that you can find copies of that and have someone make them so that they can be provided to the...
Yes, Your Honor, I will provide it to
defense.
counsel again, but I would urge counsel to advise me if ever there seems to be numbers coming out of sequence, because we are numbering the discovery consecutively, so that if there are numbers missing, counsel's made immediately aware of the fact that something is not in place.
Mr. Shapiro, did you find those pages that they're mentioning yet?
I'm not sure, Your Honor. But just by way of clarification, we just received today via fax 3 pages of discovery. The copies that I have do not have any page numbers on them. And so if Ms. Clark is correct, there was some error in her office on the number.
May I ask the counsel to show me?
Yeah.
Your Honor, these reports were very recently generated, and we are going to be turning them over again in a larger package that will be numbered. These were faxed to counsel simply to give him advanced discovery before the entire package was assembled and sent to him, which will have the numbering on it. So this was just a courtesy copy to counsel in advance of the official copy that will be coming with numbers.
All right. I believe that you indicated you had an additional witness that you wished to call before we got to the motion.
Yes, Your Honor, and for the record, we have now shown pages 222 through 225 that have been requested by counsel. Counsel has seen them. People call Rachel Ferrara.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand, please. This way.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Stand and spell your name for the record.
Rachel, R-A-C-H-E-L, Ferrara, F-E-R-R-A-R-A.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Ferrara, are you acquainted with someone by the name of Brian Kalin?
Cato, yes.
And you just said Cato?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Is that what you call him?
Mm-hmm.
His
Yeah.
nickname?
Right.
If you could please say yes and no, as opposed to uh-huh or uh-uh.
Okay.
Thank you. How long have you known Cato?
Approximately 5 months.
And during that 5-month period that you knew him, where was he living?
In OJ's guest house,
Which was located where?
Brentwood.
Do you recall the address?
Rockingham. I don't know the exact address now.
Is it at a corner or is it in the middle of the street?
It's in the middle of the street, I think.
What's the nearest cross street to Rockingham, if you know?
I don't know.
Don't. On June the 12th, 1994, did you get a call from Brian Kalin?
Yes.
About what time?
It's probably around 10:20.
And you were in your home at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Did you have a conversation with him?
Uh-huh.
What was it? Is that yes?
Yes.
What was that about?
Well, he first talked about this typewriter that he had borrowed from OJ, and he couldn't figure out how to use it. And probably did that for about 5 minutes, and then he said that he went to McDonald's with him, and he didn't say what time, but he said earlier in the night they had gone. And then we talked about some other stuff that I don't remember.
Did something interrupt your conversation during that phone call?
There was, well, he called it a loud bang, and he asked me if there was an earthquake, and I said no, because I didn't feel anything, and I also had the TV on, and I didn't hear any mention of it on the TV. And then that was probably about 20 minutes, or 15 minutes after we started talking.
How many miles away from him were you during that phone call?
Driving, probably, I don't know miles, but I mean, I could say 20 minutes driving.
During that phone call, before he told you that he'd heard the thumps,
Mm-hmm.
did you notice what time it was?
He said, well, I asked him what time it was before that, and he said around 10:30.
And how much after that did he tell you he heard the thumps?
It's already been asked.
No.
Did he tell you he heard the thumps?
Yes, and he didn't. I'm asking her the timing of that. How long after the point when they said it, they fixed the time at 10:30, did he tell you it was he heard the thumps?
My recollection was 15 minutes after the phone call.
The testimony, I believe, was 15 to 20 minutes after she started talking to him. And she had testified that that call was approximately 10:20, according to the notes I had.
And now I'm asking a different question, which is, she asked him what time it was during the phone call. He said it was 10:30, and then I asked her how long after they had that exchange about it being 10:30 did he tell her he heard the thumps?
All
It's
right.
a different question.
Objections overruled.
I'd say about 10 minutes.
Somewhere around 10:40?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yes.
yes? And did he, when he told you he heard the thumps, did he ask you something?
Yes, he asked me if it was an earthquake, and I said no, because his picture had almost fallen off the wall or shook or something. So,
Had you felt an earthquake?
no.
Now, had you ever been to the location on Rockingham where Cato was staying, in the guest house?
Yes.
How many times had you visited there?
I'd say approximately 6 or 7 times.
You'd go there, would you spend the night?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Did you use the pool area?
I used the pool once.
Jacuzzi ever?
No.
Do you know where the basketball and tennis courts were?
Yes.
Did you ever play on them?
Yes.
Did you ever go into the main house?
No.
But you were able to move around Cato's area.
Right.
When he mentioned to you about the sound,
Mm-hmm.
how did he sound to you?
He was pretty shooken up by it. And he kept saying how it scared him, basically.
Did you continue to talk after he first mentioned the thumbs to you?
Yes, we talked for probably, I'm estimating 7 minutes. And then he kept coming back to the noise because he kept saying, wow, that noise is just really freaking me out. I can't figure out what it was. So he said, I'm going to go outside and check it out. And if I'm not back in 10 minutes, then call the cops or police.
So what time was it when you hung up?
Probably around 10:50, 10:45.
So you hung up around 10:45 to 10:50?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Right, yes,
And he said he was going to look outside.
right.
What happened next? Did you hear from him again?
He was gone more than 10 minutes, probably around 15 minutes, because I actually was getting convinced there might be something wrong. So he called back after he got inside and said that that he had run into OJ outside and that he told him that he had overslept and he was supposed to be in Chicago, and he also said that he had seen the limo because the limo was out there waiting for him.
So that Cato had seen the
Cato
limo?
had seen the limo, yeah, yes.
About what time was it when he called you back?
It was probably a little after 11. 11. We'll say around 11. 11:03, 11:05.
Do you recall earlier saying it was around 11:15?
I don't know. Maybe yes.
Could it have been 11:15?
I don't know. There's so many interludes. It could have been 11:15.
Okay. When he called you back at around that time, sometime after 11, what did he tell you?
You mean it's what I just told you, that he had run into OJ when he was outside, and that OJ had told him that he had overslept and he was supposed to be catching a plane to Chicago, and the limo was out there waiting. And he said something about a flashlight. I don't know what.
Was your conversation with him interrupted?
It was probably around 10 minutes later.
And how
The
was
phone
it?
clicked. Call waiting.
A call waiting click
On his side. Yeah.
on Cato's side?
Right.
And did Cato go off the line?
Right.
Did he come back on the line?
Yes, he came back on the line.
Tell you what had happened?
He said that was OJ, and he wants me to go set the alarm because he forgot to do it. And he had given him the code, which he said he had never done before. And he thought that was a little weird.
So he thought it was weird that OJ had given him the code now to set the alarm?
Right.
And then did you continue to talk for a while?
Then we talked, yeah, for probably another hour and a half.
I have nothing further.
Cross.
No questions at this time. You might be able to available.
You may step down. I'd ask you not to discuss your testimony with anyone but the lawyers involved in this matter, and you may be recalled. Thank you. All right, I think that then we've come to that point in the proceedings where we are going to deal with the defense motion to suppress certain items of evidence. we did have a conference in chambers right before the noon hour to discuss the timing and the witnesses on this matter. And it's basically anticipated that there may be a total of 6 or 7 witnesses testifying for both sides in connection with the motion only. Is there an issue of standing that needs to be established before we get to the basics of this motion, or has that been agreed to by the parties?
Perhaps we can stipulate, we can make an offer of proof, Your Honor, that the witnesses who will be testifying will establish that the Ford Bronco, although registered to the Hertz Corporation, was permanently assigned for use by the defendant, O.J. Simpson, as part of his employment by Hertz, that it was locked and that the keys to the Bronco were inside the house. And there will also be testimony that the premises at 360 Rockingham are the family home of the defendant, O.J. Simpson, shared by his housekeeper, his daughter, and his guest, Brian Caleb.
Ms. Clark?
Is counsel asking you to stipulate that there will be such testimony, or that that is the case?
Mr. Uelmen?
Either way is fine, but I was just making an offer of proof that the testimony would elicit these facts.
With respect to the proffer concerning the Ford Bronco, the people agree. That is what the testimony will show. With respect to the premises of 360 Rockingham, there may be an issue as to the guest house area of Mr. Uelmen. I'd like to refrain from entering into any stipulation concerning standing at this point. I would stipulate that the premises of 360 Rockingham are owned by the defendant, but reserve the issue of the right to privacy of the area around the guest house unit.
I think in the abundance of caution, I'm not sure I quite understand what the import is of what Ms. Clark is willing to stipulate to. Maybe we can just establish standing at the outset so there's no issue as to standing, and then proceed as to the rest of the motion thereafter. Are you prepared to do that at this time, Mr. Uelmen?
I'm not sure our witnesses are here to do that. Your Honor, we could... All right. Yeah, we'll do it then with Detective Vannater.
Okay. Then you may call your witness.
Yes, we'll call Detective
Well,
Vannater.
excuse me, Your Honor. May I be heard?
Yes?
Perhaps what counsel would like to do is stipulate that the items of evidence we seek to introduce at this preliminary hearing were not seized pursuant to warrant. I will so stipulate, and that the burden shifts to the people. There is no reason for counsel to call Detective Vannater. We're not litigating the warrant, Your Honor.
I understand, and the court has not made any inquiry concerning the warrant at this point in time. In reading your responding papers that were filed today, there's an issue, as there is with any 1538.5 motion with regard to standing. It seemed to me that was put in issue by the responding papers that you filed, and I think the only purpose for which Mr. Uelmen was calling Detective Vannater is for the standing issues only, period. Not with regard to the merits of the motion itself, the location of evidence that was recovered, or anything of that nature. We were just going to deal solely and exclusively, initially, with the standing issues.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right? All right. Detective, please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth and whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State and spell your name for the record.
Philip Vannater, Philip Vannatter.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Vannater, did you have occasion on June 13th to visit the premises at 360 North Rockingham Drive?
Yes.
Right. We have, Your Honor, what we will ask be marked as Defense Exhibit A, which is a architect's rendering of the entire premises.
All right, that'll be marked Defendants A.
Now, before you proceeded to the premises, Mr. Vannater, had you been told who lived at these premises?
Yes.
By whom?
By Detective Fuhrman and Detective Phillips from West Los Angeles Division.
And what did they tell you about the premises?
They told me it was the residence of O.J. Simpson.
All right. And when you arrived at the premises, did you find that they were enclosed by any sort of fence or wall?
Yes.
Were the entire premises surrounded by one fence or wall?
The area that I could see was, yes.
All right. And the only entrances into those areas were a gate from Ashford Street and a gate at Rockingham Avenue?
That's correct.
Now, after you entered the premises, did you locate any persons residing on the premises?
One person was located, yes. There were actually two people there. One person told me that they resided there, and the other person said it was not their permanent residence.
All right. Now, let's refer to the first person you encountered on the premises. Was that Mr. Kalin?
That's correct, yes.
All right. And could you indicate on the chart where you encountered Mr. Kalin?
Certainly. May I stand up so I can
Please.
look at it and see? It would have been the second guest quarters.
All right.
At the rear of the location.
Now, are the guest quarters attached to the main residence?
Yes.
And it is possible to go directly from Mr. Kalin's room into the house itself?
Yes, as I recall, it's true.
All right. Now, did Mr. Kalin tell you the circumstances of his being on the premises?
No, I didn't interview him, other than he lived there. I heard him say that, but I didn't interview him until later.
Well, when you later interviewed him, did he explain why he was living there?
He didn't to me. I interviewed him regarding some noise that he had heard the previous evening. I was directed to him by Detective Fuhrman, who had previously interviewed him and wanted me to hear what he'd said about hearing a noise behind his south wall.
All right. Were you told by Detective Fuhrman that Mr. Kalin was a guest in the home who was not paying any rent for living there?
I didn't find that out until later.
All right. When did you find that out?
I believe it was much later in the day, in the afternoon.
On June 13th?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And your understanding was that he was a guest of Mr. Simpson?
My understanding when I first got in there, he was living in that guest quarters of that location. But I never found out until later in the day that he was living there rent-free.
All right. And did you encounter any other person on the premises?
Yes.
And who was that?
Arnell Simpson.
All right. And did you learn that she was Mr. Simpson's daughter?
Yes.
And where was she living?
She was living in the second guest quarters back.
All right. I believe that is designated Arnell's room on the chart?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And did she explain the circumstances of her living there?
She told me briefly when I spoke with her that she had gotten there about 1 o'clock in the morning and that it was not her primary residence.
All right. And why was she there?
She said she'd come there to spend the night.
All right. As the guest of her father, Mr. Simpson?
I think that would have been a safe assumption, yes.
All right. Your Honor, we would submit the issue of standing.
Did you wish to cover the standing with regard to the Ford Bronco also?
I believe that's been agreed to.
That's right.
You'll agree to that? Okay. Do you have some questions of the detective with regard to the standing issues?
I do not.
All right. The court is going to find that the defendant does have standing to bring this particular motion.
Yes, Your Honor. I think that perhaps I did not make my position clear. Yeah, our moving papers do not address the issue of standing. Our moving papers address the issue of expectation of privacy in the area searched around the guest house.
All right. Well, let's proceed.
That is, and people will begin with Detective Fuhrman.
All right. Thank you, Detective. You can step down.
There are at least two other detectives here. We would ask that they be excluded in these proceedings. They may be witnesses.
All right.
Your Honor, these are our investigating officers.
Well, I understand that you're investigating officers. However, apparently they're going to be testifying about matters that are in controversy with regard to this particular motion. And I think a motion to exclude would be appropriate. You'll have at least one of the investigating officers apparently present during the course of the proceedings. Is there some detective that's not going to testify that you designated as an investigating officer if you feel you need to have somebody in courtroom?
Yes, Your Honor.
And then the ones that are going to testify, would think that it would be appropriate if they remain outside when another testifying witness is proceeding.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Will you designate Detective Rogers, Lieutenant Rogers,
All right.
and ask that he remain?
And any other witness in connection with the motion should remain outside. And you said Detective Fuhrman is going to be your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand, sir.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause not pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You can state and spell your name for the record.
Mark Fuhrman, M-A-R-K, F-U-H-R-M-A-N.
You may inquire.
Sir, how are you employed?
I'm a detective for the City of Los Angeles, currently assigned to West Los Angeles Homicide.
And how many years have you been so employed?
19 years?
And is West Los Angeles Detectives your current assignment?
Yes, it is.
Now, with respect to the case now pending before this court, you're aware of which one that is?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us what time you received the call to proceed to the scene of the homicide in this case?
Yes, at 01:05 on the morning of the 13th, I received a call from my supervisor, Detective Ron Phillips.
Detective Ron Phillips?
Yes,
And what time? That was 1 a.m., 1:05 in the morning?
exactly 1:05.
And where did the call direct you to go?
To 875 South Bundy. Detective Phillips informed me we had a double homicide at that location, to meet him at the station and we would go out together.
Did you do that?
Yes, we did.
What time did you arrive at 875 South Bundy?
At 02:10 hours.
Can you tell us what the ambient temperature was that night?
I would approximate it at about 60 degrees.
When you arrived there, did you make contact with the first officer on the scene?
Yes, both Detective Phillips and I were contacted by Officer Risky.
What did you do with Officer Risky when you got there?
Well, Officer Risky informed us that the circumstances that led to the discovery of the bodies, a very kind of an overview, and then he led us to the front of the scene.
Now, when you went up to look at the bodies, sir, did you do so by walking straight up to them, or did you take a more circuitous path to avoid disturbing evidence?
Well, there was vegetation, flowers along the southern border of the cobblestone path. It was a manufactured cobblestone path. We walked up through that shrubbery and got as close as we could to the bodies.
And after you made that observation of the victims outside, what did you do next?
Well, we didn't feel that we could actually see the scene well enough without destroying evidence from that approach. So we asked Officer Risky if there was another way into the scene, and he said yes, around through the alley and through the garage.
And how did you get to the garage area?
We retraced our footsteps into that shrubbery area back out to the sidewalk. We walked onto the street southbound on Bundy to Dorothy, where we turned westbound into the north-south alley leading behind the residence.
So you actually went back out to the sidewalk, rounded the corner, and came back up through the alley to go to the garage?
Yes.
And at that point, did you go and do a walkthrough in the house with Officer Risky?
Yes, we entered through the open garage.
It was open already?
Yes, it was.
Did you notice any signs of a disturbance or struggle inside that house?
And not at all. No, not in the garage, not on the stairway, and not in any portion of the house that we walked through at that point.
And the front door of the house, did you notice whether it was open or closed?
It was wide open, yes.
Were you informed about, when you got there, concerning the occupants that were found in the house at the time that the homicide was reported?
Yes, Officer Risky informed Detective Phillips and myself that the 2 children that were found upstairs were taken to the police station because he didn't know what else to do at that point, so he had them transported to the station.
So these were 2 small children?
Yes.
And at the point in time that you spoke to Officer Risky, no one knew where to put them, whose care to give them into?
No, not at that time. I think he just wanted to get them out of the scene and get them to a place of safekeeping.
When you had walked through the house, did you come out onto the landing looking down on the crime scene?
Yes, I did.
From that vantage point, looking down on the victims, were you able to see any items of evidence?
Yes, looking down directly below the landing there, I believe at that point there was a heel print which appeared to be going in a westbound direction away from the bodies towards the alley. There was also a knit cap, or what appeared to be a knit cap, dark cap type object, and what it looked like a glove at the feet of the male victim in the shrubbery area just to the north of the female victim.
Can you describe the glove any better?
At that time, it was difficult to see it. There was another location from the north residence that I got a better view of it a little later. And then I noticed that it was a dark brown, or could have been even a black at the light that I was looking at it. And it did appear to be a stocking cap when I got a closer look.
So it looked to you to be a dark brown or even black leather glove, and did you say what color the hat was?
It was very dark. It would be dark blue or black.
Knit cap?
It appeared to be knit, yes.
Now, after you stood out on the landing and made those observations, how did you leave the area? How did you walk away from the residence?
Well, from that location, Officer Risky pointed out footprints that led away from the stairs going west. We followed to the right side of those prints, saw a few footprints leading westbound and drops of what appeared to be blood to the left of those prints.
So you saw a heel mark down by where the victims were that appeared to be pointing away from the victims in a westerly direction that would have taken the path up over the landing and towards the alley?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to
And
object to the prosecutor continuing to ask a question, get a response, and then summarize that response back to the witness. She just virtually repeats everything he testifies to.
Sustained.
Your Honor, that's not a legal objection that I'm aware of. Can I be
Basically,
permitted to
it's basically asked and answered in this court. If the witness has given that response, you don't have to ask again the response a second time. Proceed.
The other footprints that you saw were going in the same direction westerly over the landing?
Yes.
And to the left of that, you indicated you saw blood drops?
Red stains that appeared to be blood, yes.
Did those go all the way back on the landing to the alley?
There was drops up until there was steps going into a trough area that was a few feet wide, and then steps that came back out of that trough area up into the sidewalk at the same level as the front of the residence, and then there was more drops seen, but no footprints.
Now, these footprints, are these bare feet that you're seeing?
No.
What are they?
It appeared to be a shoe with a sole and a heel, not one continuous shoe print.
And how is it that you were able to see these prints?
They were imprinted in red onto the pavement of the sidewalk.
Did it appear to be in blood?
It appeared to me, yes, it was in blood.
After you made those observations walking to the right of the prints as you've indicated, what did you do next?
Continued into the continued west on the walkway to a gate. It appeared to be about a 5.5 foot gate that was very similar to the front gate that led into the residence. I observed blood on the top of the gate, red stains that I thought was blood. It looked like a small speck of blood on the turnstile of the lock and at the bottom rail of the gate. Walking further west, I saw change that Officer Risky pointed out to me that was strewn on the driveway, and drops of red stains that I believe to be blood.
Near the change?
Yes.
After making those observations, sir, did you make contact with any other detective?
Detective Phillips and I were in communication. We walked through the scene at the same time. He made similar observations, and then we returned inside the residence.
Did you do so through the garage?
Yes.
At some point, did you make contact with Detective Philip Vannater?
Shortly thereafter, Detective Phillips notified me that robbery homicide had arrived and they would be taking over the case.
And did you wait for him?
Yes, we went out onto the street and we waited, it seemed like more than an hour.
When he arrived, what did you do?
We explained the situation as we knew it thus far. I believe Ron Phillips informed him where the children were. I was standing there listening to the conversation, and Ron Phillips took Detective Vannater into the scene and showed him what we had observed and what Officer Risky had pointed out.
At some point, excuse me, strike that. Were you aware of who one of the, at least the female victim was at that time?
I was notified that when I was notified at my residence at 1:05 that morning, I was told that one of the victims was the ex-wife of O.J. Simpson.
And did you relay that information to Detective Vannater?
It was relayed, yes.
At some point, did you leave the location of 875 South Bundy?
Yes, we did.
Why?
At the direction of Detective Lang and Vannater, they asked Detective Phillips and myself to take them to 360 North Rockingham, to O.J. Simpson's house, to make a notification and to get him to come to the police station and take custody of his children.
So the purpose of going to 360 North Rockingham was...
Object again. Something we objected to before. She's asked the question and said what the purpose was.
Sustained.
Did all of you then proceed to 360 Rockingham?
Yes, we did.
And about what time did you get there?
About 5:05, 5:10.
Do you recall what portion of the property you went to first?
We went to the Ashford gate. There's an intercom buzzer there and speaker, and we started buzzing the intercom.
I'm going to show you a diagram that has previously been marked. That's pupil 7. Can you see that?
Yes, I do.
You see the area on that diagram that you went to with the other detectives
Yes, I do.
when you first got to the location?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please point it out?
The speaker box is right here on this pillar, and I believe we parked just west of the gate.
Now, when you pulled up to that location, can you describe the route that you took? Which street did you drive up to get to Ashford?
Rockingham.
When you drove up Rockingham, did you observe any vehicles parked near the gate, the Rockingham gate?
There was a white vehicle parked just north of the Rockingham gate on the east side of Rockingham, next to the parkway, adjacent to the property.
What kind of vehicle was that?
It was a sport utility truck that we later recognized as a Ford Bronco.
Now, when you were at the Ashford gate, you indicated that you rang the intercom bell.
Yes.
When you did you push the button?
I believe 3 of the 4 of us pushed the button, and we could hear the ringing inside the residence, but no one answered the intercom.
For how long did you continue to do that?
It was at least 10 or 15 minutes.
Did you observe whether there were any lights in the house?
Yes, I personally observed that there was a light upstairs front of the residence. That would have been the most westerly upstairs bedroom, or whatever room it was. I later knew that it to be a bedroom. And in the lower level, in the southwest corner, there was a light on.
After you received no response for 10 to 15 minutes, what did you do next?
Well, Detective Phillips was on his cellular phone attempting to contact West Tech to find out if Mr. Simpson was in town or not.
What is West Tech, sir?
It's a private security firm that has contracts throughout that part of Brentwood and Bel Air.
And why was it that you called West Tech?
Well, a lot of times when when people leave on vacation or business, they notify West Tech that they're not going to be on the property, and if there is an alarm that they're not home, and to, you know, sometimes use a passkey, make entry, or whatever's necessary, but basically that they're not home.
So were you calling to find out if they knew there had been plans made for the occupants of that location to go somewhere?
We were hoping that we could find that out, yes.
Was there a sign on the property somewhere to indicate it was protected by West Tech? Is that why you chose that particular company?
I'm not sure if I saw that sign. I mean, we have knowledge that West Tech handles that area. Not to say that another one couldn't, but predominantly that is the service that is contracted in that area.
What information did West Tech give you, if you know, over the phone when Detective Phillips called?
Well, I remember a unit being there. I believe.
A unit? What do you mean?
A West Tech unit arrived at the scene. I'm not sure if it was at Detective Phillips' response, or excuse me, from Detective Phillips' phone call. Detective Phillips was contacting the station, who in turn was calling West Tech. At some point, West Tech arrived within a few minutes while we were still ringing the intercom. They informed us, to their knowledge, that Mr. Simpson was not out of town. While we're still attempting to make some kind of contact with anybody inside the home. Detective Phillips is attempting to get a phone number from West Tech so we might call directly into the residence.
So a unit from West Tech came out to the property?
As they were on the street, they were parked southbound Rockingham at Ashford. They stayed at that location. He did not get out of the vehicle.
Did you have a conversation with him?
Not that West Tech officer. Detective Phillips approached him and asked him about getting a number for the inside, but he said he couldn't do that without a supervisor's approval, and a supervisor was requested. A supervisor did arrive a few minutes later, and I approached that man.
Did West Tech Security inform you that they had no... Did you ask them whether the occupants had travel plans?
They had no knowledge that he was not supposed to be home. I don't think it was carried any farther than that.
Did you ask him whether anyone was supposed to be home there?
I did not personally know.
You don't know what the other detectives did in that regard?
No, I don't.
Did they ever give you information that a full-time maid lived there?
They did not, but the sergeant that did respond to the scene who pulled up, he was going northbound in Rockingham. I stopped him just before he got to Ashford. He got out of his vehicle and was walking towards me, and I asked him, I informed him of the situation, that we were trying to ascertain if there was anybody at the residence. He says, well, there's a full-time maid that's supposed to be here all the time.
When you say the sergeant of West LA PD?
No, West Tech. It was
Oh,
a
West
West Tech
Tech.
supervisor that the West Tech officer that was already at the scene notified.
What happened next?
While Detective Phillips was on the cellular phone, and he was trying to call inside the residence, he did obtain the number. Detective Lang and Vannater were still attempting to raise somebody on the intercom. They were standing by the gate. I walked around to the Rockingham side and went towards the white vehicle that we previously saw when we drove up Rockingham. I was walking towards the vehicle, the Bronco, and I noticed that the vehicle was parked rather strangely. It looked like it was parked in a very haphazard manner. The rear end was kicked out a little bit towards the street. The front end was real close to the curb with the tires turned into the curb. It just, when I was walking towards it, it looked a little strange for the area since there's no parallel parking. As I walked closer, I noticed a piece of wood lying on the parkway, which is very well manicured. It looked like it came from a picket fence. I looked at it closer, and it looked like it was freshly broken. The wood hadn't been weatherized, the exposed part. I walked around the vehicle, and I had a small flashlight, the type you just put on your belt, very small. I was looking over the vehicle from the front, and I came to the driver's door, and I saw a red stain above the chrome handle to the driver's door that was about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch square round, and I believe that to be blood.
Now this car, this Ford Bronco you're describing, it was parked where?
It was parked northbound on Rockingham, just north of the Rockingham gate to 360 North Rockingham, adjacent to the east curb of Rockingham.
So it was on the street? It was not inside the gates?
Yes, ma'am.
Showing you the series of photographs that have previously been marked as People's 8. Can I ask you if you recognize the vehicle being shown in photograph labeled A and B?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
That's the Ford Bronco that I observed parked in Rockingham the morning of the 13th.
That's the one you're describing that you looked at with your small pen light?
Yes.
Can you tell us what is shown in photograph B?
In photograph B, this small red stain here is a stain that I saw that I believed was blood. And this is right above the driver's side door handle.
And what else did you see?
At that time, there was, I inspected the door more closely. I got down on the ground and looked at the door jamb area, which would be in photo A. This area, the seam of the lower door where it opened.
Where the door meets the floor of the driver's side of the car?
Yes.
What did you see there?
I saw 3 or 4 little lines, red stained lines that looked like a brush mark, and which also looked like blood. They were very small, about 1/4 of an inch long.
Was the car muddied and dirty?
No, not at all. Very clean.
Was it as you see it in photograph A?
Yes.
Did you attempt to find out who that car belonged to?
I ultimately did run the license plate via my radio. The DMV came back to Hertz Rent-A-Car.
Was there any way of determining who was supposed to be in possession of it at the time that you were seeing it?
Well, after I observed the stain on the driver's door, I looked in the interior of the vehicle. I looked closely in this area right here. It's tinted, and you can see that there. I pressed my flashlight against it, and I observed a package in the rear cargo area, all the way in the rear. It was a package that was addressed in handwriting to O.J. Simpson, and I believe it was care of Kathy.
Can you recall whether it was addressed to O.J. Simpson or to a business with that name?
Overruled.
I could not tell you the address. I did see it just said O.J. Simpson. I'm not sure if it was Enterprises or O.J. Simpson. I noticed the name.
Did you notice anything else?
Yes, in the rear cargo area, in the same place as the package. The package was all the way against the rear seat area in the Bronco, and lying in the rear cargo area there was a shovel. I would approximate a 4.5, 5-foot shovel. There was also what appeared to be, from looking through the window, a heavy gauge plastic that was tucked in the right storage area of that rear cargo area.
What happened next?
I went around several feet in front of the Bronco. I didn't want to yell. I did call for Detectives Vannater, Phillips, and Lang to meet me. We met at the corner of Ashford and Rockingham, and I told them what I had discovered. I said, I believe I found some blood on the Bronco. I showed all 3 of them what I had found, and Detectives Lang and Phillips returned to the Ashford gate, still attempting to raise someone inside the house. Detective Vannater and myself discussed the situation at that point, just several feet in front of the Bronco.
Now, when you said they were trying to raise someone from the house, by what means were they doing that?
Well, I believe they went back to the Ashford gate, and I know Detective Phillips was trying to call somebody in the residence. I didn't know if he ceased that attempt at that time or continued it.
Did you have in your possession, or to your knowledge, did the other detectives have in their possession at that time a phone number for the house itself?
Yes, I'm absolutely sure that Ron Phillips had already acquired a phone number inside the residence and was trying on his cellular phone to get somebody to answer the phone.
So West Tech did finally give that number to you?
I'm not positive if he got that from the watch commander or West Tech directly, but I was told that he obtained it, and that's what he was in the process of doing.
Was there any response to the phone calls made to the residence?
None.
So at that point, after the observations you made and failure to raise anybody in the house, did you have a conversation with Detective Vannater?
Yes.
What was the nature of that conversation?
I told Detective Vannater, I said, we got an emergency here. We got a problem. We don't know if we have people inside that are in danger, dying, bleeding to death. We have to do something. I don't care whose house this is. We have to do something. We don't know if we have a murder-suicide, a kidnapping, another victim. And Phil agreed, and we took our opinions to Detective Lang and Phillips, and we discussed the possibilities.
So what was it you wanted to do and why?
Well, I believe that we had to find out if there was anybody in the residence that was injured to save their life, save other people's lives. We didn't know what the situation was, and from what we knew and where we just came from, I think it was imperative that we contact someone and make sure everything was okay.
Now, what time was it at that point when you were all conferring about what to do?
I believe we were out there for at least 30 minutes, attempting to get somebody on the phone, attempting to have somebody open the gate. While they're continuing to do that, I walked over and made the observations on the Bronco. And I would say 30 to 40 minutes.
So what time was it approximately then?
It was probably 5:40, 5:45, 5:50.
Were you aware of approximately what time it was that the small children were taken out of 875 South Bundy?
I don't know that exact time, no.
You arrived there, again, what time?
I arrived at the Bundy scene at 02:10.
The children, were they there at the time you got there?
No.
So at the time that you were at the Rockingham address, to your knowledge, had anything been done to arrange for the care and custody of the children?
No, to my knowledge, they were still at the station.
Did that play any part in your determination to go into the, as to what to do at that point?
Well, I believe immensely we had to find out if anything was wrong inside the residence. We had children at the station. We had the possibility of somebody being injured. We had to go in, but I don't think that was the paramount reason. It was preservation of life from what we knew at that point.
So what did you decide to do?
We decided, Detective Vannater decided that we will go in, and how are we going to do that? And I said, I'll go over the wall. So I jumped the wall and went over and opened up the hydraulic gate.
And then the other detectives were still outside the gate, right?
Yes, I opened the gate and they walked in.
What did you do when they all came inside the gate?
Well, we all four went to the front door of the residence and knocked on the door.
What happened?
Nobody answered.
How long did you continue to try and knock on the door?
I think that was just a few minutes, maybe 1, maybe 2 minutes.
Did you receive any response?
No.
What'd you do next?
There's a walkway that leads on the north side of the residence back towards the pool area. We walked on that stone path past the rear of the residence, adjacent to the pool, and there appeared to be pool houses or guest houses, and we went down to one of those.